Thank you for tuning in to the Keeping It Real with KC podcast, a no judgment zone podcast that covers lifestyle, entertainment, news, and sports. Even though KC doesn't watch sports, but these are minor details. By the way, he reads tarot cards too. Yes, I really mean it. He reads tarot cards too. And now, the host you've tuned in for, KC Phoenix.
Welcome back to the Keeping It Real with KC podcast. I, of course, am your host, KC Phoenix. And yeah, this story, believe it or not, I'm a little, hesitant when it comes to the actions that were taken. I'm sort of on the side of the person who's eating, as you can tell by the title of the episode. However, before I go any further, KIRWKC.com, main podcasting platform. This podcast is carried on Apple, Spotify, Google, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Overcast, Bullhorn, Amazon Music, Audible, and several other podcasting platforms. Please feel free to listen to this podcast on whatever platform is most convenient for you. KIRWKC on all the social media platforms. Now, this particular story, I meant to do this story weeks ago. For whatever reason, I shelved the story and then I totally forgot about it. And when I was looking for some news stories to do, I was scrolling through and I found it and I was like, wasn't I supposed to do that story? And then I looked and it was in my bookmark, because usually I'll bookmark the story on my browser, my web browser. And I was like, wait a second, it's bookmarked. Yeah, I was supposed to do the story. I didn't do the story. So here's the story, which this story is funny to me. Maybe it's funny to you. But anyways, I will read the title, which I don't know why they decided to say Chinese man banned from barbecue buffet for eating too much. This happened in China. So I guess it was sort of clickbait to say, oh, well, he was Chinese, so he got banned. If he's in China, clearly he's Chinese. I can't see them banning a French man in China for eating too much. But whatever. So yeah, that's the title of this article. Chinese man banned from barbecue buffet for eating too much. It says, have you seen the old episodes of The Simpsons where Homer gets banned from a seafood buffet for eating too much? It seems the cartoon predicted the future once again. To find Homer's real life equivalent, we'll have to travel to the city of Changsha in south central China. There we find a man that goes by the name Mr. Kang. Just like Homer Simpson, Mr. Kang can eat immense quantities of food at once. And just like Homer, he's been kicked out for good from Handadi Seafood Barbecue Buffet, one of his favorite restaurants. According to the BBC, Kang calls the treatment he received discriminatory. After all, he hasn't exactly done anything wrong. I can eat a lot. Is that a fault? He wondered in an interview with Hunan TV. However, Kang did mention how much food he ate, and the amounts of food are pretty disturbing. On one visit, he consumed around 3 pounds of pork trotters, while on another binge, he ate nearly 9 pounds of shrimp. However, the man claims that he didn't waste any of the food. In his own words, he ate it all, at least the parts that were humanly edible. The restaurant's anonymous owner, however, isn't thrilled with Kang's eating habits. According to him, Kang is eating him out of house and home. Every time he comes here, I lose a few hundred yuan. He said. For reference, 500 yuan or won is about $78. The owner went into more detail about Kang's ravenous appetite. He doesn't just eat enormous amounts of food. During one sitting, he also consumes 20 to 30 bottles of soy milk, whereas most customers only take 1 or 2 pork trotters on their plate. Kang will empty the serving tray. And for prawns, usually people use tongs to pick them up. He uses a tray to take them all, the owner bemoaned. Fun fact. That's exactly what Homer did as well. The similarities are uncanny. Kang's and the restaurant owner's interviews have blown up on Chinese social media. Hunan TV story has gathered more than 250 million views on the Weibo platform. The public's opinion on the Kang incident is divided. Some sympathize with the restaurant owner, while others question why he is running a buffet restaurant if he can't afford it. Growing food shortages. The case of Mr. Kang hasn't yet attracted the attention of China's notoriously all-seeing government, but it might soon do so. After all, last year, China's President Xi Jinping launched the Clean Plate campaign that aims to crack down on food waste and overeating. And for once, there's actually a good reason for it. China could be running out of food. Food shortages are an ever-growing issue in multiple Chinese regions. The problems have been compounded by the supply chain issues brought on by the situation around the world. As a cherry on top of the food disaster, floods in China's breadbasket areas destroyed large quantities of crops earlier this year. So it's no wonder the state is concerned about food. But instead of trying to produce more of it, the Clean Plate campaign encourages Chinese citizens to eat sensibly. Xi is telling China to consume only as much as they need and finish everything they put on their plate. Crackdown on Mukbang. A particular target of the campaign is mukbang videos circulating on social media. The mukbang trend started in South Korea, and it features social media personalities eating immense quantities of food on camera. Chinese media channels have published critical reports of mukbang stars. Even social media platforms have started cracking down on the videos. Now, if you search for them, China's most popular social media platforms will display a warning message chastising people for wasting food. It's possible that the videos could soon start getting deleted from platforms altogether. However, some mukbang stars are playing along with the campaign. A popular mukbanger going by the name of Minnie appeared on a video on a state-run news channel asking people to stop wasting food. Whether they're doing so out of genuine social concern or because they're afraid of unwelcome government attention, we can't say. But at least the don't waste food message is sensible. All right, that's all on the article. Let me go ahead and give my input on this. Some people, and I've done this before, where I would eat just because I could. I don't eat like that anymore. I mentioned it during my podcast, where I could go to Burger King, and I kid you not, I could eat 2 double Whoppers, a large French fry, a medium onion ring, an apple pie, and a soda. And sometimes I get a side salad, to be a little bit healthy. But funny, but it's true. And I could eat it all and not have an issue and not gain weight either. So, and that was the thing too. However, as someone who has been on both sides of this, where I've eaten a lot and I've eaten a little, my appetite just isn't as big as it used to be compared to then. There were situations where I ate because I could. There were situations I ate because I was hungry. My biggest thing is wasting food. If you have a lot of food on your plate, and you're like, oh, I'm about to eat this, but then you don't. That's one of my pet peeves. I can't stand wasting food. That irritates me. And this isn't a dig at anybody specific. I'm just talking about in general, because I'll give myself the side eye if I have food. And there have been times before where I actually have not felt well, and I had started eating, and then it's like, oh, I don't know if I can finish this, but then I force myself to finish because I didn't want to waste the food. That's just how I am. For this person, Mr. Kang, who goes to the buffet, if he is eating all of the food that he puts on his plate, is it wasteful in the sense of, oh, you're consuming a lot of food. Could that food be used somewhere else? And then that's the other question too, because some people haven't asked this question. When it comes to, because I worked in fast food restaurants and I worked in regular restaurants too when I was younger. And food goes to waste. The people don't always eat all of the food that the restaurant produces. So for the restaurant owner, I'm curious. I bet you nobody asked this question. I'm curious how much food goes to waste after a certain day or two, because everything has a shelf life. Usually, like with certain restaurants, like buffets and Italian restaurants. I worked at an Italian restaurant before, and what they would do is the food that was not eaten, that was cooked, they would go ahead, store it in the freezer or in the cooler, and then use it for the next day to cook it, and then that's it. And then after that, anything that's left over from that tray, it couldn't be used again or something of that nature. There's like a whole system that's set up with all of this stuff. But the point is that restaurants do throw away food. There was another situation, I want to say, was it Dunkin' Donuts? You can Google it, or DuckDuckGo or Bing or whatever search engine you use. But there was a situation where it was a donut place. So it was Dunkin' Donuts, Krispy Kreme, or somebody. They were throwing away donuts because the expiration date had hit. And somebody was going to the garbage can to get the donuts, because they're like, okay, these are still edible. These are still good. Because don't forget, and I don't know what the standards or regulations are in China. I do know that standards and regulations are more relaxed in China than they are in America. Hence why certain things happen in China than they do in America, because the regulations are different. But I'll just speak for America. The standards and regulations in America, where when it comes to food, where you're saying, okay, this food, today's December the 6th. Let's say the food is good until December the 8th, because you're going by whatever the regulation is required for this food, this industry, or whatever. That may not be the actual date where the food goes bad. It's just December the 8th is what's been determined by whatever group, FDA or whatever federal agency, because God knows we have too many of them, but these are minor details. Whatever federal agency or state agency or city agency or all of the above determined, this is the date that you can keep the food up until. After this date, the food has to go. But usually, that's not the case. The food is usually still good. So the person was going to the garbage can and getting the donuts, because more than likely the donuts were still good. And they were like, you can't do that. You can't do that, because you're not paying for the donuts. But they're like, dude, you were throwing them away. I tell that story to go back to this story with Mr. Kang. If the restaurant is throwing food away at nighttime, or whatever days they're throwing food away, where's the harm? Where's the foul? The restaurant owner is saying that this man is costing him money, but to say that implies that this man doesn't throw food away. And I don't believe that. This is just me. This is just me giving my little 10 cents or 2 cents. You know, I don't believe that. I have not known of hardly any restaurant in history ever that doesn't throw away some type of food. Whether it's the ingredients to make stuff, even if you make stuff fresh, where it's made to order to made to order, or whatever you call it, where they don't start cooking it until it's ordered. Those ingredients, depending on, I'll give you an example. Let's say somebody orders, let's say people order 100 hamburgers one day. You have to have lettuce, you have to have tomato, you have to have onions and pickles and things like that. If you have all of that stuff on hamburger. I don't eat onions anymore because onions give me a headache now for whatever reason. But just the things that go on a hamburger. But then the next day, you only sell 50 hamburgers. Next day, you maybe only sell 25. Okay. So the food that you put out there, as in you estimated that you would need for the week, as the days go on, it's like, okay, wait a second. We're not using all of this food. Okay, then what happens to it? So I'm going back to the restaurant owner. Is he throwing away any food? And I would be willing to bet you that restaurant owner has thrown away some food. And my thing is, if you're throwing away any type of food, you would want someone who comes in that can help you. I see it as getting your money's worth. Now, I don't know the full workings of this individual's restaurant. Part of me feels like some of this is PR. Just saying. I feel like some of this is PR. But the other part of me is, that would be really interesting. I like to see where, because the man said, oh, well, he costs me this much amount when he comes in and eats. If I were a news reporter, I would be like, okay, you're making this accusation. I need to see the receipts. Do you throw away food? How do you estimate what food you bring into the restaurant and what's going to be eaten and things of that nature? What is your profit and loss statement? I need to see where this specific person is creating an actual loss. Now, if his buffet is on a daily thing where he has certain foods that come in, because with some restaurants, they go to markets that morning, they get the food fresh, and then they go in there and do what they do. And that restaurant could be one of those situations, especially since it's seafood. However, my spidey sense is telling me part of this is PR, and the other part of this, I feel like the restaurant owner throws away some food at nighttime. And if it's any of those two, then I'm on the side of the person eating, because he's making sure food doesn't go to waste. Now, on the flip side of that, if the person is full and he's still eating while he's full, then yes, that's being a glutton, and that's tacky is what that is. But for the most part, maybe the guy just has a huge appetite. There may be some people like that. There's a surgery, and again, I'm not a medical professional or anything like that, but there's a surgery with where they take your stomach and fold it or do something like that. And one of the things that happens is it changes your appetite. And because your appetite changes, then you start to eat less due to the surgery. Again, going back to what I was just saying, some people may naturally have big appetites, and there's something going on in their body. Now, whether it is something that is abnormal or whether it's something that is normal, that is for the medical industry to decide. And I'm not saying that one doctor can make a decision on that. It might be several doctors that might need to examine this guy, and possibly, excuse me, a psychiatrist, psychologist, or whatever, to see what is prompting him to want to continue eating. If he's eating a whole tray of something, if he's eating 9 pounds of shrimp and he's still hungry, if he's drinking, 10 to 20 things of soy milk, what chemical in his brain, what's triggering all of that? What's going on? What is going on in his body internally that's triggering all of this? Again, that's for the medical industry and the psychological industry to determine. We don't have access to all of that information. We're on the outside looking in. Based off of what I have on the outside looking in, I'm kind of siding with the person who's doing the eating, because he's eating everything that is on his plate. That's the biggest thing. And also because I know restaurants throw away food. So yeah, that's just my thoughts on that. Let me get going. KIRWKC.com, main podcasting platform. This podcast is carried on Apple, Spotify, Google, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Overcast, Bullhorn, Amazon Music, Audible, and several other podcasting platforms. Please feel free to listen to this podcast on whatever platform is most convenient for you. KIRWKC on all the social media platforms. Until next time, be blessed.